Chris Yandick, CYInterview, covering Las Vegas and the world. Happy Wednesday. We're here in downtown Las Vegas near the Fremont Street Experience. You can see the Golden Gate behind me, and of course there is Circa. Today we're going to revisit our CYInterview with Academy Award-winning actor Geoffrey Rush, and here it is.
You're on CYInterview.
This is Chris Yandick. His ability to play a variety of roles and his award recognition numerous times over has made Geoffrey Rush one of the greatest actors going today. The Academy Award, Emmy Award, and Tony Award winner known for his roles in The King's Speech, Shine, and the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, spoke in our CYInterview about his new movie The Eye of the Storm, many great stories about his acting journey, meeting Queen Elizabeth II last year, will he ever try to win a Grammy to complete the Major Entertainment Award foursome? And so much more in this compelling and enlightening conversation.
Geoffrey Rush, thank you so much for joining me. The new movie is The Eye of the Storm. It opens on September 7th in New York and Florida, and of course LA, and then it's going to go into many more theaters in a couple of weeks. Thank you for joining me today. How you doing, man?
I'm fine, Chris. Thank you.
You know, The Eye of the Storm is one of those stories many adult children go through where they have to deal with and decide what to do about an aging parent. Did you take anything away from this story personally?
Look, my relationship with my mother, I have to say, is probably the complete opposite to what it is playing Sir Basil with Elizabeth in this particular story. I always had great supportive encouragement and care and consideration and nurturing as I sort of, as I became an actor in my early 20s. It was a little unheard of. At that stage in Australia, we were relatively on a global level, a bit of a cultural wasteland to a certain degree. So the idea of actually going into a profession as an actor seemed highly unlikely, but circumstances allowed that to happen. And my mother was very supportive of that.
Yeah, you've talked very fondly about your mother being supportive of your acting career, and of course, as you mention in this movie, of course, your mother is not very supportive of her son, and she doesn't come to see him. So what are your fondest memories of your mother supporting you in your acting career?
I think the fact that, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, into the 70s in Australia, our film industry had gone heads up and was, almost non-existent apart from a few offshore productions. There wasn't a tremendous amount of professional theatre around at that point. So no one ever really had their sights sort of set on the possibilities of that being a profession. But I had an interesting conversation with my mother one day when she revealed to me that she was always in her youth. She always hoped that she could have been, and she might have been influenced by American movies, I don't know. She said, I would love to have been a dancer in a troupe, in a variety show, and be in the company of all of those kinds of people, which I thought was quite interesting because I have very, very fond memories of my mother from my childhood. She was a great jiver, and from when I was 7 or 8, I can remember her always rolling up the rug and hitting the floor with her various dance partners and having a great sense of rhythm. And I hope I've inherited a few of those genes.
At this point in your career, does it mean anything different to you to film a movie where the background for the project is your home country, or is it still special and the same?
Oh, it means a lot. I mean, I've tried to interweave, I started my first major sort of Australian film roles happened in the mid-90s when I was in my mid-40s. I'd spent most of my time, 25 years in the theatre before that. So to suddenly find myself in a position where, a reasonably good number of roles and quite diverse roles occurred, and I've been trying to interweave them in and around international offers. It's always that much more fascinating to go back and play out within the nuances of the psyche of your own landscape, your own country, your own place, whether it's Lantana or Candy or Ned Kelly or Brand New Day, and so that's. I've had the good fortune for that to happen on and off every 18 months, every 2 years. There's always, for me, been some very stimulating Australian project. And in this particular case, with The Eye of the Storm, being able to work with a hero of mine, Fred Skepsey, because back in the mid-'70s when I was a student in London and Paris, during that period of absence from Australia, our film industry kind of really reignited, and Fred was very much at the forefront of that. So when I saw his early films like Devil's Playground and Chant of Jimmy Blacksmith when I was in Europe, even seeing them in a European context was interesting,
Yeah, you play this great actor character in the movie, of course, who loves the stage, and his career is kind of on the downward, with everything you've been through in your acting career. How relatable is this character to you?
It's very scary to go into that sort of territory. But, I think in the narrative, that's the least significant thing. I think Patrick White, and in the adaptation for the screenplay, it's more having the character written as an actor, meaning it's somebody who's sort of perhaps, because an actor's body is their own instrument, their own imagination is their own instrument. It's more it's a lively format for someone to be self-inspecting and analyzing their own state of being. And that's more what's happening, I think, on a metaphoric level, that Basil is trying to assess where did his adult life go horribly, horribly wrong, which is why I think he makes the journey back to the country in the course of the film to his childhood home.
Yes, and sees his mother.
Where things might have gone off the rails.
Yeah, and he tries to learn from his miserable mother what has gone wrong and how can he make it better.
Yes, well, that's I suppose where a lot of the dramatic conflict comes from, because you're not dealing with two easy, open-minded, honest, rational
people,
human beings.
Yes, it's one of these great films. I feel like when I'm watching it that, there's just not enough of them made anymore. It's just real, legitimate acting on screen that takes you through, and it's thought-provoking as you go along, and then there's a lot to think about.
Well, that's good. I mean, I would have thought, Patrick White was a great, apart from his great literary kind of acclaim, I got to know Patrick in the later part of his life because I was involved with a couple of plays that he'd written in his late 60s. And he loved showfolk, he loved theater people, he loved actresses, he loved movies. It would be quite extraordinary for him if he was still around, I think, to see that this film has happened. And I would imagine if he'd had his dream come true in his own lifetime, maybe someone like Douglas Sirk should be directing his work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a feeling of heightened expressionistic energy in the writing, like a Tennessee Williams, where language, the complexity and density of language is very important.
We don't have enough of that in Hollywood today.
Well, I could easily agree with you on that, because I think there's room for those kinds of experiences.
Oh, I agree with you. You're an inspiration to everybody, in my opinion, because you stuck with what you wanted, into your 40s, and then you finally got your big breaks. For everyone out there who has wanted to quit or wanted to give up on a dream, what do you say to them about keep going? How do you keep going?
I've probably noticed just more recently, I've been doing more theater again for the last 3 or 4, 5 years. And particularly within Australia, and some of those productions have made forays into New York. We came here with Exit the King to Broadway a couple of years ago, and last year to the Brooklyn Academy, and that was very exciting. So I'm now in a position where even on a film set, I look around and think, wow, I'm sort of pretty much the oldest guy here now. You know what I mean? It sort of sneaks up on you very quickly. But I find it very stimulating and intriguing to be working with people in their teens, their early 20s, into their 30s, to sort of see it's a different context. I mean, there's even just not just the political, social differences that exist now, but the technological differences are huge in terms of means of communication and stuff. So I do get asked a lot by younger people, what advice can you give? And, there is no easy desk calendar aphorism, but I always say, remember, for me, if this means anything for you, being an actor is putting yourself into a state of imaginative play. It's not about red carpets, it's not about career movements, it's not about celebrity, and all of the trappings that tend to clutter up what the job description fundamentally asks of you. You have to get to know your own imaginative parameters and develop your skills and what you can express vocally and physically. There's a craft involved. But at the same time, I suppose I distill that down to, follow instincts. Somewhere in the back of your mind, there's always going to be a very strong instinct that helps you make decisive moments in the creation of your work or in the maneuverings of your career. There's always going to be moments where you'll hit crossroads and have to make a decision, is it the right fork or the left fork? And be on high alert to sometimes take risks, sometimes find assurance, sometimes strengthen and develop something that's already there. There's a lot that needs to be processed.
I think a lot of people are going to appreciate that answer and take something away from it, but I have to say, what do you credit your ability to do so many different varieties of roles? As you know, many actors can only do a certain type of role, but you seem to do everything.
Well, that's nice praise, and I thank you for it. Look, it's. I think the answer to that is a fairly comes from a practical assessment of it. I started out in repertory theatre in the subsidised state theatre companies of Australia, and I did 3 years of theatre. And it all happened quite suddenly. I was at university studying a generic arts degree and was engaged with lots of on-campus theatrical life, which was very lively at the time, on a political and a period of cultural shift and so forth. And during that time, the Queensland Theatre Company was established as a professional identity, and suddenly the director of that newly formed company had seen some of my work and my colleagues in university productions, and he offered us a job, and suddenly I was there with a 3-year contract to be an actor, and I thought I was probably going to end up in radio or teaching or something, So it all happened sort of very, very suddenly, and I just kind of grabbed onto that and, let the runaway horse do what it had to do.
Oh, I think you're phenomenal in so many ways, and I think we can learn so much from you on so many different horizons. And I say to you, obviously, of course, people will remember you from the King's Speech just recently in the recent years, but of course, last year, you got to meet Queen Elizabeth. What was it like meeting the Queen?
That was an interesting experience, because at that time, I was in preparation to play Lady Bracknell in The Importance of Being Earnest. Not that I was going to end up playing Lady Bracknell as the Queen, but by coincidence I was sat at luncheon next to Her Majesty's Chief Lady-in-Waiting, who was a hoot. She was a great luncheon companion, and as an actor, I like being in those unusual circumstances. It's not every day you get to be invited to Government House and all of the attendant formalities of that, to be able to observe how that echelon of society works. So I was able to, have a very rare and enjoyable experience, and kind of in the back of my mind keep my antenna on high alert to see whether there were some little glimpses of truthful behavior that came from that particular class of society.
Yeah, of course. Well, you talk about those unique and interesting experiences. Of course, you talked about the dream dinner party and your Oscar speech win for Shine. Does it mean anything different to you today, the Academy Award?
I don't know. It becomes an adjective that becomes in the media attached to your name, but I don't think it should ever be the key part of your calling card. I mean, in brokering a new project or whatever discussions, as random as they might be, with other creative people who might be suggesting an upcoming project or a daring step to say, hey, wouldn't it be great to have a look at doing this? As is what happened with Fred Skepsey and I of The Storm. He said, look, I think I've got the finance together. You should really take a good close look at Sir Basil Hunter, and I think Judy Davis is on board. They're the key processes, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a few more. You're one of the few people on the entire earth that has won the Triple Crown of Acting, which of course is the Oscar, the Tony, and the Emmy. Do you ever have any aspirations to win a Grammy one day to finish off the collection of the 4 major entertainment awards? I was preparing for this interview, Geoffrey, and a lot of people really want to hear you sing. Any chance you'll ever put out an album or something, or maybe a soundtrack tied to a movie that could win a Grammy?
Well, I don't know. I know that somebody had alerted me to one of the characters, I think, in 30 Rock is obsessed by the EGOT. I know. I couldn't even tell you. I think there's only a handful of people. I know Sir John Gielgud is involved in that, and he probably got a Grammy because he probably recorded. He did a Shakespeare compilation show many, many decades ago.
There's like 10 people who have.
Man.
There's like 10 people who have won it. Whoopi Goldberg is another one of those who I spoke with in recent years.
Right. But I don't think you can set that up as a career path. It's unlikely that I would ever get into a recording studio as a singer.
Okay.
But in terms of spoken word, I don't know. It would have to be a particularly stimulating project.
Well, of course,
I'm not actively pursuing it to kind of fulfill that crazy idea of a challenge.
Well, of course, getting back to Australia, in the eye of the storm, you're the Australian of the Year this year. Is that the biggest honor that you could ever receive?
Well, it is. I suppose if I really put it into context, it's been an accolade in Australia that's happened since 1960, and more often than not, I suppose it's awarded to someone that's already prominent to some degree in public life. But in that 52-year history, there have only ever been 2 actors from film or theatre. The first being Sir Robert Helpman, who was not only a notable, internationally recognized ballet star, but also Shakespearean actor, and probably known to a younger generation as the child catcher from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And the second was Paul Hogan back in the mid-'80s. So in terms of let's say, how artistic endeavor or the arts industry or artistic life in Australia is generally not regarded as the highest goal to strive for, even though we have an extraordinary history of great performers and internationally recognized people, etc., etc. It's been good for our industry to raise the credibility and visibility by having an artist in that given that particular award. So I sort of accept it gratefully in that respect.
Absolutely. The Eye of the Storm comes out September 7th, this coming weekend, to theaters in Florida, Los Angeles, and New York, and then to a wider distribution on September 21st. Geoffrey Rush, thank you so much for joining me. A great pleasure. Before we go, though, I do have two last things. What do you hope people remember about you, and what do you want people to know about you?
I don't know. I suppose if there's a younger generation of actors, to know that over the last 4 decades that I've been working within the context of Australian cultural life, enormous changes, enormous goals have been reached. Things are not now out of our grasp the way they were back then, when we were relatively on a global level in a cultural wasteland. So they've got to move onwards and upwards, and I hope that's something that they would choose to pursue. I don't know about the rest. It's whatever people might make out of the curious mosaic of one actor's career. I can't get an overview on that because I'm hopefully still in the middle of it.
You'll be in the middle of it 20 years from now, I'm sure, because you give the most memorable performances and you can play the variety of roles that most people can't, and you have done it so gracefully. Thank you so much, Geoffrey Rush, for your time today. It was a great pleasure to speak with you.
Thanks, Chris.
For CYInterview, I'm Chris Yandak.